Last night at 7:15 p.m., President Trump went into what's called seclusion at the White House, meaning he wouldn't see any reporters, wouldn't go anywhere, and wouldn't do anything for 2 days. So what exactly is he doing? A simple interpretation is that it's the calm before the storm. So will a major war break out again in the Middle East? That's the first topic we're bringing you today. In addition, the White House has released the second batch of so-called UFO files as scheduled. So what do these UFO files tell us? Among these more than 200 documents, is there enough evidence for us to conclude that aliens really exist? Also, Elon Musk's SpaceX is set to go public on the 12th of next month, which will make it the largest IPO in history. What makes it unique, and what will it create? For the first time in human history, someone might become a trillionaire. Not a millionaire, not a billionaire, but a trillionaire. So what's really going on with this IPO? Also, the White House just released a statement regarding non-visa immigrants in the U.S. who want to change their status. They'll have to return to their home country for an interview. So what's really going on here? Who will this affect and who won't it affect? That's the topic I'm bringing you today. All right, welcome to Good Morning America with Feng Wei. Well, actually, it's good afternoon now. Anyway, it's the weekend. No matter what, I'm glad you're tuning into my show this weekend. I'm here to bring you the most important news. And if you're looking for in-depth and logical news analysis, you're in the right place. Subscribe for the evening edition as well. Every day, I don't just keep up with the latest news. I also bring you in-depth analysis of the reasons and impacts behind the events. I also want to thank my longtime listeners for helping to share and forward the show so that more Chinese friends can understand what's really happening in the world. All right, let's start by talking about the situation in Iran. What exactly has Trump been up to this weekend? First, let's look at the gap between both sides. The latest development is that Pakistan's chief of army staff has gone to Iran, and Qatar has also gone to Iran to join in what they're calling peace mediation. Meanwhile, the Pakistani army released a statement saying that after intensive negotiations over the past 24 hours, they've made what they call encouraging and breakthrough progress. Really? The Pakistani military says both sides are accelerating efforts toward an agreement. Sounds optimistic, right? Of course, as a mediator, you have to be optimistic to do the job. So what's the actual situation? As for Iran, their position throughout the negotiations has been very straightforward. Just two main points. First, end the war and have both sides lift the blockade. Second, the issue of nuclear weapons can be discussed later. That's for the next step. So these are Iran's demands. As for the U.S. side, through Secretary of State Rubio, expressed their stance. In just a few words, you can clearly see where the U.S. stands. Rubio said that President Trump is more inclined to resolve things through diplomatic means, but the issue of Iran absolutely not being allowed to possess nuclear weapons must be resolved no matter what. Rubio also said that we are negotiating with a group of people who are very difficult to deal with. If the situation doesn't change, President Trump has made it clear that he has other options, that is, going to war. That's what he means by that. So today, Rubio said this, that negotiations are currently making slight progress. In English, that's slight progress. So this is different from the so-called encouraging and breakthrough progress in Pakistan. Rubio said it's only slight progress. Okay, but then Rubio went on to say that there might be an announcement later today, tomorrow, or in the next few days. What does that mean? So will there be a breakthrough on the Iran issue? In other words, will an agreement be reached? Let me put it this way. I think the chances are very small. But if it does happen, what would the content be? Let me give a little preview here. I'll make a bold prediction. Both sides would mutually lift sanctions. Iran would lift the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, and the U.S. would lift its sanctions on Iran. As for the nuclear issue, that would be discussed in the next round of talks. If that's the case, then it would definitely be a major concession from the U.S. Why? Because once the siege is loosened, Iran would immediately bounce back. But right now, because the world's oil reserves have basically been depleted, you have to realize the Iran war has been going on for how many days now? From February 28th until now, it's been almost 90 days. Many countries' oil reserves have basically been used up. Well, maybe not completely used up, but they're steadily decreasing and are running dangerously low. That's why energy prices keep rising everywhere, which is causing global inflation. So if both sides really do lift restrictions equally, that would mean the U.S. is letting go of its grip on Iran's throat, basically to prevent Iran from choking the rest of the world. As for the negotiations, they're just going to drag on slowly. And for the US, that means everything is being pushed back for now, because if things go this way, there won't be any solution to the nuclear issue in this first stage. And the US has already tested again. If the nuclear issue can't be resolved, there's absolutely no way they're going to back down. That's basically what it means. All right, and then there's another possibility. How does President Trump himself see it? He came right out and said it. Right now, the chances of success are 50-50. He said solid 50-50, meaning a steady, even split. It could be war or it could be peace. So this weekend is basically the American version of War and Peace. All right, let's talk a bit about the situation right before the potential conflict. During this more than a month-long ceasefire, it's said, at least according to rumors, since this kind of news never makes it to the official channels, that Iran has imported thousands of cheap drones from the Chinese Communist Party. On the American side, they've also been ramping up their military readiness. The U.S. Secretary of the Navy even said that the $141 million arms sale to Taiwan would be delayed because weapons need to be prioritized for the Middle East. So both sides are basically on a hair trigger. Also, let me briefly talk about the situation with the double blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, this would mean that nearly 100%, or at least over 90% of shipping would be disrupted. So what about Iran? Through its blockade, it has trapped 1,550 ships, and 23,000 crew members are stuck in the Persian Gulf. However, Iran also said that in the past 24 hours, they coordinated to let 35 ships leave. Well, so how should we put this? That's just 2%. Meanwhile, the U.S. blockade has forced over 100 Iran-related ships to turn back. Not just forced, but actually made them return. Whether they were trying to leave from inside or enter from outside, all of them were denied passage. The 4 Iranian ships trying to force their way through were badly damaged, with rudders or engine rooms hit, leaving them unable to proceed. Meanwhile, Iran's attempt to establish a Persian Gulf Strait administration to nationalize the area was flatly rejected by Washington as out of the question. In addition, the UK also announced this month that it would send drones, fighter jets, and a Royal Navy vessel to join the international escort mission. But honestly, nothing has actually happened yet. It's just an announcement. So when it comes to taking action, the UK and Europe are really slow, painfully slow, honestly. Too late, too little, right? I think these 4 words are a pretty objective way to describe Europe's or the UK's actions. All right, so what's the most important signal right before a conflict? Trump? He's not going to the Bahamas. For his eldest son's wedding, starting from 7:15 last night, the White House issued a notice that the president has been staying at the White House since last night, with no public activity scheduled for the entire weekend. No press conferences or public speeches are planned. But even though he's staying at the White House, he's not seeing any reporters. However, he did tell the press there's something called an in-town pool call time. What does that mean? It means the White House press corps has to be on standby just in case there's a sudden press conference. But so far, nothing has been announced. It's just listed as to be determined. So why is that? Well, Trump, as usual, doesn't beat around the bush. He says things directly, saying it's about government business and his love for America. They won't let me leave the White House, but they also said, well, they mentioned it, right? That it's related to the Iran situation and other matters concerning Iran. So basically, it's all about preparing for battle, the final peace negotiations, and the preparations before going to war. That's why I think President Trump hasn't met with anyone these past couple of days and has been staying in the White House, focusing on these matters. So now the White House is facing a choice, war or peace. Which one will they ultimately choose? All right, in addition to preparing for war, President Trump is also expected to have phone calls today with the leaders of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt. In short, making a final round of diplomatic efforts. So honestly, I can say that if a war does break out in the next couple of days, the U.S. will have done everything possible. It will have gone above and beyond, exhausting every opportunity and putting everything on the table. If Iran still refuses, then there's really only one option left. Meanwhile, at the same time, over in the East China Sea and South China Sea, The Chinese Navy has dispatched more than 100 warships, overseas security teams, and surveillance vessels into the Yellow Sea, South China Sea, and deep into strategic waters of the Western Pacific. They've covered the entire surrounding waters along the First Island chain. Taiwan's National Security Council Secretary General Wellington Koo strongly criticized this, saying that the Chinese Communist Party is deliberately carrying out gray zone operations to undermine regional stability. So you see, while Trump is locked in a long standoff at the White House, while there's talk about whether to strike Iran, the Chinese Communist Party is carrying out its largest ever military deployment targeting Taiwan and the South China Sea. So is this aimed at Trump? What do you think? Let's all discuss it. Everyone, share your thoughts. Is the CCP strategy meant to influence Trump's decision-making, to make him hesitate to take action? With such a massive force surrounding Taiwan, aren't you worried? So what does everyone think? What could it be? If you think China is targeting Iran, just type or write targeting. Otherwise, if you don't think so, just say, no, that's not the case. All right, and at the same time, today, tens of thousands of people in Taiwan flooded the streets of Taipei, holding a massive rally to strongly demand that the government significantly increase defense spending. Accelerate the arming of Taiwan. The people at the rally accused the opposition-controlled Legislative Yuan of only approving two-thirds of President Lai Ching-te's proposed $40 billion special defense budget, which has seriously delayed Taiwan's preparations for war. And in addition, as I mentioned to everyone yesterday, on Thursday, during a hearing of the Senate Appropriations Committee's Defense Subcommittee, acting U.S. Secretary of the Navy Eric Raven stated that the U.S. would suspend $141 million in arms sales to Taiwan. Since he said this, reporters definitely surrounded the White House with questions. Are you going to verify this? Are you going to confirm or deny it? They kept pressing for answers. So a White House official told the media that what he said was accurate. As President Trump has stated, he will make a decision on this new arms sale to Taiwan in the near future. Anyway, what's interesting is that up to now, the government of the Republic of China still hasn't received any official notification about this matter. In other words, nothing from the authorities. In terms of official procedures between the two countries, the United States has not actually suspended this arms sale to Taiwan. It's just that Cotton brought it up during a subcommittee meeting of the Senate Armed Services Committee. He floated this idea, made this statement. So why is it like this, you might ask? Did Cotton just speak out on his own without his boss knowing? Is it possible for him to say something like this without approval? The possibility is zero, right? So if the boss knows about this, why doesn't the boss just say it himself? Clearly, I think this is about sending a signal. At the same time, they don't want this to become too big of an issue or be forced to explain it. In English, this is called deniability, meaning I can distance myself, I can keep myself out of it. So clearly, it's just about sending a signal to the CCP saying that this matter is negotiable. Are you going to cooperate or not? Are you going to hurry up and fulfill the promises you made? That's basically what it means. All right, next, let me talk to everyone about this. So what's new with Musk? This is the 12th launch of his Starship, and then just 3 weeks later, Musk's company SpaceX is about to go public. If it does go public, just how big will this IPO be? You probably can't even imagine how big it'll be. So Musk's SpaceX is expected to go public on the NASDAQ on June 12th. And the stock ticker will be SPCX, SpaceX. Last night, SpaceX launched its latest version of the Starship in Texas, the version 3, Starship 3, the new Starship Model 3. So then, okay, so what it is, so the day before the launch, something went wrong. After the incident, they canceled it, but then launched again the next day. This new Starship Model 3 is made up of something called the Super Heavy, which is a Super Heavy booster plus the Starship itself. It's basically two stages. The rocket at the bottom pushes it up, and after it's launched, it separates. Then it keeps flying, and the rocket comes back. We all know about rocket recovery. As for the Starship itself, it can also fly back on its own. Basically, the idea is to launch everything and recover everything. But this time, everything was launched, and everything crashed on the way back. Why did this happen? And yet it was still considered a huge success. Why is that? All right, I'll explain to everyone why in a moment. This was the 12th test flight of the new Starship and also the first one in 7 months. This is also what's called the next generation Starship. It's a bit longer than the previous generation, just a little bit longer. But anyway, when it's fully stacked, the total height exceeds 124 feet. So it's the thing at the bottom plus the booster on top, along with the Starship itself. Yesterday, during the launch, it lifted off smoothly. The booster has 33 engines, and these engines are called Raptor engines. So 32 of them were fine, but one failed halfway through the flight. But that didn't really matter. There were still 32 engines pushing it. After reaching the designated altitude, the two parts separated. The upper spacecraft then ignited its own engines. It has 6 engines, and after ignition, it continued flying into space. As for the booster, it was supposed to return on its own, but during its return, it lost control and crashed into the Gulf of Mexico. So this was the first and second failures, right? The first failure happened the night before, and the second failure was with the booster. One of its engines shut down. In the end, it didn't perform the planned boost-back burn to return as expected, and instead, it lost control and crashed into the Gulf of Mexico. Then, among the 6 engines on the upper stage, one of them also failed. The remaining 5 engines extended their burn time to make up for the lost thrust, and in the end, they still managed to successfully send the spacecraft to its intended position in space. After that, they successfully deployed 22 so-called Starlink satellites. Actually, they were mock satellites, since this was just an experiment. After these mock satellites were deployed, they would fall back down on their own, okay? They just drop down one after another, since they're just dummy satellites. I'll explain why in a bit, okay? So this Starlink version 3, after flying over the Indian Ocean, eventually started re-entering the atmosphere. During this re-entry process, SpaceX kept reminding everyone, since the whole thing was being broadcast live to the public. With so many people watching, millions of pairs of eyes on it, SpaceX kept reminding everyone that the spacecraft might not make it through the atmosphere, that it could burn up along the way. But in the end, the Starship version 3 managed to stay intact. In the end, it landed on the ocean, there was no recovery ship waiting, and after landing on the water, it exploded. Bam! Take a look, once it toppled over, that was it. This is what they call a flip maneuver. After flipping and falling onto the sea, it blew up. And after it exploded, everyone burst into applause, cheering and celebrating. What's going on here? Let me tell you, everything this time was pretty much expected. Most of it was within expectations. Neither the booster nor the spacecraft was planned to be recovered, because this is an important experimental step for Musk. Of course, the ultimate goal is to fully recover and reuse everything, but this time, there was no intention to recover them. Why is that? Because this is called trial and error. So as you saw, the launch the day before didn't go smoothly either. Then what happened with the launch the next day? Out of the 32 engines on the booster, 1 shut down. After the booster separated, its return didn't go smoothly either, and out of the 6 engines on the spacecraft, 1 also shut down. In short, there were at least 4 issues, but for Musk, it was still a success. Why that? This is Musk's way of doing things. It's called frequent trial and error. Frequent trial and error, frequent improvements, rapid iteration, and quick success. That's what sets him apart from NASA and Bezos' Blue Origin in terms of development philosophy. Musk is never afraid of failure. His path of innovation and development truly embodies that old Chinese saying, failure is the mother of success. His success is built on layer upon layer of continuous mistakes, because with every mistake, you figure out what went wrong, right? You fix it right away, don't you? You immediately sense it and try again. If you make another mistake, you fix it again. The number of problems is limited. After enough corrections, once you fixed them all, you're good to go. You've nailed it. So at the same time, as you all know, 3 weeks from now, on June 12th, Musk's SpaceX is expected to go public, to have its IPO. And this IPO, so this time, yesterday's, the 12th newly built flight, which made 4 consecutive mistakes, has injected tremendous momentum into this IPO. The entire market is also affirming his actions this time. So making mistakes isn't a big deal. This is exactly the inertia, the pattern of how Musk keeps achieving success through his mistakes. All right, let's talk about how big SpaceX would be if Musk took it public, its IPO valuation, basically how much money it would be aiming for. The target is about $70 billion, or actually $75 billion. This would set its market value, because what does going public mean? It means selling a portion of your shares to the public, right? In exchange, you get back $75 billion. But this also sets a price for each share, doesn't it? If you take this IPO price and multiply it by all the company's shares, you get the company's valuation at the time of the IPO, which would be close to $2 trillion. Close to $2 trillion. So that's the situation, or 2 trillion US dollars. This would be the largest IPO in US history, and that shows in two ways. So after the IPO is completed, how much will Musk's Tesla be worth? It will be worth 2 trillion. What does 2 trillion mean? Let me explain. Amazon, for example, has been operating for 20 years and its market value is only 2.8 trillion, okay? Microsoft is doing a bit better at 3.2 trillion, but Microsoft has been around for 40 years. Apple is only at 3.9 trillion, which is just twice that amount. Alphabet, which is Google, is at 4.2 trillion. Alphabet is 4.2 trillion, and the highest is Nvidia. Nvidia is now at 5.2 trillion. So on the very first day SpaceX goes public on the open market, on the very first day, it would immediately squeeze into the top 6 or even the top 7 or 6 companies in the world. That's the situation. What does it mean to make a meteoric rise? Well, whether you're talking about SpaceX's products or its stock price, that's what you call a meteoric rise. On the very day it goes public, it will surpass Saudi Arabia's national funds listed company, Aramco. At the same time, it will also surpass Meta and Buffett's Berkshire, and even Tesla. Okay, they're all in the same league, but SpaceX would be even bigger. So what does it mean to raise $75 billion? That's also a record high in history. Because the previous largest IPO record was held by Saudi Arabia with its state-owned company. They raised $26 billion, which is 2 or 3 times less. Musk is coming in at 3 times that amount right off the bat. So that's just how impressive this is. Of course, the IPO process already started on April 1st. For example, they secretly submitted the S-1 form to the SEC, and on May 20th, the prospectus was made public. The official roadshow began on June 4th. June 11th is the pricing date, and on the 12th, it gets listed. That's how it goes. So how much money are they actually making now? Are they profitable? The biggest company to ever go public still isn't making money. It's actually losing money. Last year, their annual revenue was between 15 and 16 billion. This year, it's expected to reach between 22 and 30 billion. So where does its money come from? A lot of things actually cost money. Its main source of profit is Starlink. That's their satellite, the one that provides internet service. Starlink accounts for 70 to 80% of their revenue, reaching up to 20 billion. Last year, it was only 11.8 billion, and now in recent years, it's grown to 20 billion, a growth rate of over 40%. As for their launch services, like those for NASA, the US government, and governments around the world, those only make up about 20% to 25% of their revenue. So that's about 5 to 6 billion. Now, how many Starlink subscribers are there worldwide? 17 million. All of this was meticulously planned by Musk. Just think about it. Back then, he wanted to launch some kind of mission to Mars, right? That's why he created SpaceX. You want to go to Mars, but who's going to give you money? You're just spending money. So what do? You have to succeed before people will give you money. But before you succeed, you have to spend a ton of money. Where does the money come from? What is SpaceX's business model? So that's why he created Starlink. Starlink provides internet service for his rockets, for his satellites. It's basically supplying ammunition for the whole Starlink system. They make money by simply providing internet access and then use that money to launch satellites, rockets, and spacecraft. Only after the spacecraft missions succeed, like landing on the moon or going to Mars, can they actually get paid for those. Before that, they have to rely on their internet service to generate revenue. That's basically how it works. But does anyone know what percentage of the global commercial satellite launch market Musk controls? It's 82%. So when people say the United States is the most powerful in space, nowadays it's not NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, that leads the way anymore. In the past, it was always NASA, right? The moon landings, the Apollo program, all NASA. But now it's a private company, and that company is SpaceX. So it's truly amazing. SpaceX really is an American legend, and this legend was created by a first-generation American. An immigrant from South Africa, Musk, created it, so it's really quite incredible. It's really impressive, and right now he doesn't really have any competitors. Like Blue Origin, Rocket Lab, and others, even if you add them all together, the second, third, and fourth place combined, even if you combine all their launch capabilities, they still can't match SpaceX's annual launch volume. All the launches in history from everyone else combined can't catch up to what SpaceX does in a single year. That's how far ahead they are. All right, so in another 3 weeks, its IPO will be the largest single fundraising event in history. Once it goes public, it will immediately rank among the top 7 companies in the world. Okay, structurally, it combines the characteristics of a relatively new monopoly, defense, and founder control. Musk owns 40% of the shares, with controlling rights exceeding 40%, actually more than half. So this is different from Tesla. With Tesla, Musk only owns about 20%, just 10-something percent, 11 or 12. He only gets to 20% after he completes all those incredibly ambitious plans he signed with Tesla's shareholders. But with SpaceX, he started out with 40%. So Musk will be the first in human history. What do you call it? A trillionaire, right? A trillionaire is way ahead of the world's second richest person. The second richest might only have $3 or $4 billion, but the first could have over $1 trillion. That's just how much wealth Musk has today. So it's really, really amazing. Let me ask everyone, would you buy it? Would you buy his publicly listed stock? Is there anyone who wants to buy? If you want to buy, let's make a note of it. Anyway, actually, since I've reported a lot of news about Musk before, many of our viewers have already bought Tesla stock. It seems like they haven't lost money either, but let me say it again, I'm not an investment advisor. What I'm sharing is just news, so you can't just watch my news and go buy stocks. You have to make your own decisions, okay?